right. We're about to start another one of our thrilling shows this evening. It's going to be a little different than the content I've had in the past. I'm fortunate this evening to have a guest, very distinguished guest, Mark Liotta.
How's it going?
Very well, Mark. Yeah, I met Mark a few weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, I think, during the course of attending comedy shows at various places in Austin. Fortunate enough to strike up conversations with Mark, and that's kind of turned into a friendship to the point where we converse on the phone fairly often, and we share a lot of common interests. So it's a very much a pleasure to have you
It's
here,
a pleasure to be here.
Mark.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I'd like to kind of get started with you and let people know who you are and a little bit of your background. One of the things that struck me when I did a little research on you, actually, on the internet, is I discovered you are a member of the Screen Actors Guild. So I'm really fortunate to have a professional, card-carrying Screen Actors Guild actor on this show. So, Mark, you want to tell us a little bit about how you came to the position you're in, and what is the Screen Actors Guild all about?
Yeah, the union and stuff, working with Screen Actors Guild, it takes some time, but you get into certain commercials and you do certain things that kind of just turn out in a way that you get like these vouchers. You get these vouchers all the time. Like I think it's 3 vouchers to get into the union. So yeah, you get the vouchers and then send it in. They're like, oh, now you're a member. Pay your dues. You know, like pay the money. Like own up. But you do that, and then you get if you continually work, you get benefits and whatnot. And I just got that through commercials and music videos and whatnot.
So, what led you to pursue that kind of a career direction? Uh, your background in music, acting, just interest in stage and screen. How did that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, really, I just was doing theater forever since I was a kid, and I got into it. I went to school for it, and then I, did what everybody else does. They just go out to L.A. and they're like, "Hey, let's fucking be an actor," and lo and behold, I guess it was like some 2 years after I was there in 2011 that I started getting like different roles and auditioning just nonstop. It's like hundreds of auditions. So yeah.
So, when you were younger, um, you said you liked to act. Did that kind of start out maybe high school plays or more
Yeah.
professional than that?
Yeah. No. Yeah. It started with pretty much like junior high stuff, and then I
Wow.
did UIL competitions and dumb shit that I'm like, oh, this is cool. I enjoy doing this, and just randomly, got into uh, going to UIL like state competitions and whatnot, and you know,
What
yeah.
what type of roles did you play?
For like the theater stuff.
Yeah,
Oh
for
man, I
theater.
did I did a play in 8th grade called Dukes of Hazzard. Or wait, no, was it not Dukes of Hazzard? It was Comedy of Errors. What am I talking about right now? Dukes of Hazzard. No, I did Comedy of Errors, and I played the Duke. Yeah, and it was like a rendition. It was like a modern day rendition.
A modern day what?
It was a modern day rendition of Comedy of Errors, which was a Shakespeare play, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
and yeah, it was just fun. Like we did it. It was 8th grade, and like it was Texas state competition. I got like best actor, and I was like, oh, this is neat. Maybe I might enjoy doing this further on. So that's kind of what led that whole journey.
Have you read many of the Shakespearean plays?
I have,
Are
yeah.
you knowledgeable as far as Shakespeare and
I couldn't like quote anything off the top of my head, but yeah, I'm pretty versed in most of his writing. So
Yeah, you know, I find that fascinating reading to study the history of plays and how they emerged, in particularly in England. Although same thing that was happening in Spain, although most people don't realize that.
They don't.
Can't
Yeah.
remember the name of the guy's name, but there was also a Spanish playwright
Oh
who is
yeah. Oh.
in that language. He is the equivalent of Shakespeare as far as his fame. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I can't remember his name. I mean, I could Google it if you want me to look it up, but I'm pretty sure. I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, that's probably not germane to this discussion. But anyway,
Okay.
so far as Shakespeare, what's amazing is that in the era that he wrote his plays, you know, there wasn't much entertainment. I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. I mean, what are you gonna
what did you
watch on
do?
fucking
What
TV?
did you do when
There
you're
is
out
no
in some
TV.
village or in London or whatever? I mean, you couldn't go home and turn on TV.
Yeah.
I guess you go to the pub and drink and go home and beat your wife, or
That's pretty much just beat your wife up
get in fights
24/7.
or whatever.
I'm gonna beat my wife up tonight.
Yeah, no
I
shit.
drink at
So,
the pub.
but I think it maybe really started with the royalty, is, you know, wanting to be entertained, and I believe a lot of the funding of the early playwrights came through royalty, and they performed for royalty. Because I think, wasn't Shakespeare the first troupe he was with called the King's Men?
I believe so, but I know that it just like Roman times. It was bread and circus. Is that the thing I'm looking for? Circus and bread, something like that.
I don't know.
It's pretty much just entertain the masses while we, kill everybody else and don't give you food. Just as much as you're entertained, that is the equivalent of you're just pacified.
Yeah, but I think it gave those troops in that era a start, because it did eventually move to the public, because there were a number of theaters built that put on plays, and the general public could come to those. It was certainly not anything that was confined strictly to the royalty.
Yeah, that's what they made it for, the common person.
The Globe
the
Theater
blacksmith, the whatever, the whoever's.
wasn't the Globe. That was the first theater that Shakespeare actually was a part owner of, and the majority of his plays were played in that theater.
I think so. Yeah.
There was another guy, Christopher Marlowe, back in the era. Do you know him? I think he was an actor more so than a playwright back
In Shakespeare's time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was a contemporary.
I'm not too familiar with that. I couldn't quote anything that he did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we don't need to get too far off in that direction anyway. So anyway, coming back to earlier conversation we were having on the phone before you came over here, and that's part of the backdrop here.
Tornadoes. They're coming to get you.
I didn't know it. I hadn't paid much attention to the news today. In fact, I hadn't paid any attention to the news today. And you called my attention to that series of tornadoes. I did a little web searching to kind of get myself up to speed on it. And what I saw in that, Mark, is it looked like it was a band of tornadoes that swept up through kind of from the area of Memphis up
all the way
into western Tennessee, which Memphis is in western Tennessee, up into western Kentucky, a little bit of Arkansas, a little bit of Missouri, a little bit of Illinois.
Yeah.
That whole
It was a
central
whole gigantic
area of the
thing
U.S.
that, I think it was what, like you said, 19?
Something
19
like that.
tornadoes.
And, hundreds of people killed or injured.
That's nuts, dude.
The thing that struck me, and this is the thing I want to ask you about, I noticed that this tornado happened to hit a candle factory
Yeah, that's what killed like a ton, like 50 people. Was
and
in
an
there.
Amazon warehouse.
Was
Did
it
you know
an
that?
Amazon
Yeah,
warehouse? I thought it was just a candle
Amazon
factory.
warehouse in southern Illinois.
Okay. Yeah.
And that candle factory was in western Kentucky. Now, the thing that struck me about that, normally when I pull up, tornado disaster type news, it's always hit a trailer park.
Yeah, it's always because they don't have basements. They're not like,
I always thought maybe that aluminum kind of attracted the storm.
It's pulling in the storm,
Invariably,
guys.
you see,
Get
you
rid of
see
the
a trailer
aluminum.
park that's completely devastated. Shit's blown everywhere. The
Yeah.
trailers are blown up. Laundry's all scattered out in the yard.
Yeah.
And so I always thought maybe there was some affinity for tornadoes to aluminum.
I feel like that. Yeah, definitely. Like when I was a kid, yeah, I was in a tornado in Hockley, Texas.
Yeah.
And it sucked. It was not fun. I don't recommend it.
The other thing they seem to want to hit is boats. If you notice, you see it. 'Cause that may be more hurricanes than tornadoes. That it seem like that draws in the heavy winds also.
The boats.
So,
Oh,
what do you figure? What is common between a candle factory, and an Amazon warehouse, and a trailer park? Well, do you think there's some
wax
magic wax? You think it's the wax?
Are they?
I might have some wax in my ears.
throwing-
Let's see if I got wax. I'm sure if I
throwing
heard.
wax on the
See if I heard
boats?
you
I don't know.
correctly. Maybe I've got some wax in my ears.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's got to be something like that.
Something like that.
Because they're getting, and it's not even like they're not running into major metropolitan areas. I mean, for the most part, it's always just in the middle of nowhere, and they're just running into these aluminum sheds and like pulling up sheet metal and throwing it into. It's the Twister movie from the '90s. Guys, watch that movie. Watch the Twister movie.
But you said you had a tornado experience. I actually have one too.
Ooh,
A
tell me.
little bit
I wanna hear it.
indirect, but let me relate this to you, and I'd love to hear your story also. Texas people will probably, or at least Central Texas people will probably remember in 1997, we had that, what was it, Category 5? I don't know, whatever the highest category of tornadoes is.
Yeah.
It came through and
What part of Texas?
Gerald. It hit
Gerald.
north of Georgetown, up in that area is where it hit.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had a house out in Dripping Springs, which is east of Austin, on the other side of Lake Travis, and quite some distance from Gerald. Well, anyway, I'll get to that. So I was on a ski trip, a spring ski trip, with my daughter, oldest daughter, and some of her friends, and we were coming back from Colorado and driving at night, and we're coming back through Johnson City, Texas area, and I could see a storm off in the distance, and it got closer and closer to all. And that was I didn't have a cell phone. That was pre-cell phone era for me. And I could see off in the distance that there was some terrible storm going on. And as we got closer and closer in, you could see it was getting worse and worse. And by the way, I've seen this phenomenon since then. You get that sulfur-looking sky.
Yeah, it's like green.
Green,
it's like a green,
yellow, ugly, and you get tic-tac-toe lightning.
Oh, yeah.
The lightning, not only is it going vertically, it's going horizontal from cloud to cloud. I mean, there were lightning strikes, I swear to goodness, they looked like a tic-tac-toe board as I was driving in towards Austin from Johnson City. And then it started hailing, and I pulled under a covered area at a gas station for a period of time. It kind of abated a little bit. I came on in, got home. My wife was all excited. She said, "Well, did you hear about the tornado?" I said, "What tornado?" And she said, "Yeah, there's a terrible tornado that hit
Everybody died.
north of
hanging out.
Austin." And so the details of that, and our phone was out, okay?
Yeah.
I couldn't call, I tried to call.
This was 90 what?
97.
97.
Our phone was out. So, I started investigating a little bit, particularly the fact that our phone was out over the course of a few days. And they said, there's some problem with the equipment. One of the switching stations was down, and it would be some period of time before our phone service was restored. And so, the more I researched this thing, the more I found out about the path of it, how it had come down through Gerald. It hit downtown Gerald. It hit some woman's house. It sucked her. She was in the bathtub. It sucked her up into the tornado in the bathtub.
Did she die? What
No,
happened?
no, it dropped her in the main street of Gerald, still in the tub, and all
So the
she
tub saved her.
it's all she came out of it with was a broken arm.
Get the fuck out of here! Holy
Yeah,
shit!
and there were other
dude.
people that were impaled. That's the other thing about tornadoes.
Yeah, the like
Splinters.
splinters. They say like a thing of hay can just like shoot through your body.
It'll shoot,
Like a,
you know, things, you know, a splinter going 300 miles an hour will go through your body.
yeah, it'll just. Phew.
In fact, I think that's one of the more common causes of death from
Yeah,
tornadoes.
because it's like a it's kind of like a shell explosion. You know, if you're in war, you get a bunch of fragments all through your system, so it makes it a lot harder to you know, figure out exactly where the damage is, because it'll just, if something splinters, a piece of wood hits you, you're fucked. Yeah.
Well, I think especially if they don't get all the splinters out, then it festers and you get infection, and
infections,
then anything
fuck,
can
man.
happen after that.
Jesus.
But anyway, to continue that tornado story, the more I researched it, I discovered that not only had it hit Gerald, it came on a path that went across Lake Travis, which is west of Austin, and it actually got pretty close to my house. And so I drove out that way because I discovered that's where that phone switching center was located, is out in that area. And I thought, oh, I'll just go out and see what's going on with that. So, Mark, I drove out 71 towards Pedernales and out that direction. And there's a little back road there. I forgot the name of Bell Creek or something like that. I drove up that road, and it was, that road was on the path of the tornado after it crossed Lake Travis. And I got to a point, top of the hill, that's where that phone switching center was located. Well, there wasn't any phone switching center there.
Yeah.
There was, I drove up to it, there was a concrete slab, large concrete slab. Building was gone. There was some conduit sticking up through the slab with wires sticking out of it. No equipment, no building, no nothing, just a concrete slab. That was
just a slab.
That was the phone switching center.
Jesus Christ. Wrap yourself
And
in
then
concrete.
I drove a little further, and that path had come down over the hill, took out the switching center, down the hill, back up another one. And it's kind of a grassy area, some small trees, a number of houses. And that path was like you had taken a giant lawnmower and run it over the hill, up and down,
It was like the path,
evenly
the path
cut.
of the tornado.
The grass was sucked out of the ground, but it had clipped trees, it had clipped the grass, even houses. It had come along like you had taken a blade
and
and
it was
just
like in half the houses and stuff.
things of that nature. Yeah, absolutely amazing. Now that one, I think I said it was a Cat 5. I could be Cat 4, Cat 5, which I think means you've got 300 mile an hour and above winds.
Yeah, that's what they were pushing really hard on, like Twister. You know, it's an F5.
The 1,000-year storm.
It's like
everybody tries to always blow it out of proportion. You know, the 1,000-year storm or.
Yeah, well, I feel like what just happened last night was like a 1,000-year storm.
Yeah, you know, I grew up in Tennessee, but East Tennessee, which is mountainous, we never got tornadoes there. In fact, I remember my mother assuring me when I was a little boy that we weren't going to get any tornadoes in Elizabethton, which is my hometown, because we were up in the mountains, and we never did. Now I don't know if she was right.
They still
or,
get tornadoes.
Or just a good predictor or what.
Yeah.
But pretty common to have them mid-state, Nashville, which is up on a plateau, but more level, and certainly West Tennessee, which is flat as a freaking flitter.
Yeah.
And then Kentucky, a lot of it's pretty flat. That whole area over there is a pretty flat.
It's super flat.
Part of the country. So anyway, what was your tornado experience? I'd love to hear that.
Oh yeah. So I think I was maybe I guess 13 or something like that.
2013?
No, 13 years old.
Oh, you were
like,
13
yeah, I was
years
in,
old. Okay, well, I won't ask when that was
Nah,
because I don't want to pry your age
No.
out of you, Mark.
I'll be 35 in a month. But,
okay. Well,
I
got a couple of years on you.
Yeah, you do. No, I think it was I'm trying to remember the year. It was somewhere in like 2000 or something, like, I don't know. But so we moved out of the country after I got back from New York. So I was living in New York, and we're living in outside of Houston, in Hockley, and this massive. I want to say massive, but I don't really know because the Weather Channel didn't even say, or like the weather people didn't say exactly what the size of the tornado was. Maybe it was like an F2, but it took my shed from the back. Like we lived in like a trailer, like a double wide, and it took the
Oh
shed.
man, that aluminum was drawing it in.
Oh, the aluminum was bringing
now
it
we
in.
know why
Now we know why this happened. It was the aluminum, dude. It
Yeah.
was the
Okay.
aluminum.
See, that confirmed what I thought, Mark.
And so I had a tractor, like a fucking riding lawnmower, and I had this whole shed built up. It was a big wooden shed. It came through, destroyed the back of the shed, lifted the mower up, threw it into the house, and it threw the baseboard of the shed into the house too. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a bunch of shit. Like I was just like, what's going on now? Like I'm hearing a bunch of wind, and you know I'm freaked out. I'm like probably 12.
Can you make that wind sound a little more?
Yeah, it's a little bit more like, watch out, Mark. And I'm like, oh my god. And I was freaked out, and I'm like,
Now, is that
Mom,
the kind of sound effect you'd use if you were doing a voiceover commercial or something
if it was
like
a voiceover commercial, it'd be more like,
Yeah, let's hear that. Let's
All right,
go ahead
let's
and
see.
expound that.
All right, let's see.
pretend like you're doing a voiceover commercial. I'm selling tornado insurance, and I've got this big bullshit storyline, and I've hired you to do my voiceover for my tornado storyline.
there's
So
a bunch
imagine
of,
this. I've got pictures of this god-awful tornado,
all right.
and you're talking about the wonderful things that I'm going to do for you with my insurance.
With
And
your
now you've got
insurance.
to throw the sound effect in there to frighten people into buying my insurance.
There's a thunderstorm outside. You're a little kid and you're scared. You go yell to your parents, but your parents aren't there. But who is there? The insurance company. They'll protect you when you're going to die.
Okay.
Most certainly.
Are you going to send me a bill for that, Mark? It seemed like that was a rather professional performance.
Oh, dude.
You're going to die.
I'm going to die.
But the insurance will save you.
So what do you think? We take a short break here and come back to it in just a minute?
Sure,
We've been going almost 25 minutes, so
Oh, yeah. Where are we counting on?
let's
Where
take a
are we
little
looking?
break. So let's just fade out and we'll stop.
Oh, we're here. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So just back in.
1, 2. Test.
All right, so we're going to pick back up from where we were with the last portion of this podcast. I had introduced Mark Liotta before. I got some questions, or at least one question for you, Mark. I'd like to, it's a popular question. I kind of like to pop it on you and see what your feelings and beliefs are. But you can see the backdrop here, so the question might be kind of obvious. UFOs, what do you think about UFOs? That's a real hot topic nowadays.
Yeah, it is. It's a super hot topic. I mean, and I think that, you know, the way that the Pentagon is releasing this information right now, it's not a conspiracy or even a question at any point now. We know that there's what they call UAPs. We know that they're disclosing this, and they're like, there are objects in our airspace that we cannot identify. We don't know how they work, but they're there, and they're defying physics.
Yeah, I had in one of my previous episodes that dwelt on UFOs and aliens. I think I had that picture, or at least one of the ones that you're referring to, that the Pentagon had released, that shows some object. They don't know what it is, but it was captured multiple times very clearly by a military aircraft.
Yeah, there was the guys off of, I guess, off the California coast, Fravor. I forget his name. But yeah, all these Top Gun pilots have been documenting this, and then waiting until the release that's just happened recently for the Pentagon to say, hey, this is actually real. What they saw was documented through instrumentation and, the speed and the way that it moved through all these super expensive instruments,
Have you ever seen a UFO yourself or thought you did?
Yeah, I have, man. I'm trying to think of where the best time that I've ever seen a UFO. Probably be like Nevada, like out in Las Vegas. And you always have to ask yourself, is this an actual UFO?
You weren't out near Area 51, were you?
No. I was living in Vegas, and I'm like camping, and I'm like, wait a second, what the fuck is that? And
So how much had you been drinking?
Kind of bit a bunch. I mean, maybe a little bit her,
Not that much,
Not
of
that
course.
much. No, it was like legitimate scary shit that we were like, what the fuck? And I was being practical. I was like, hey, this is probably the Air Force testing something, you know?
Well, I think that raises a good question about how much basis behind various sightings there might be so far as, is that some legitimate testing of some new technology that the military is developing versus, truly a something that is not, something that maybe is extraterrestrial or wherever UFOs might come from?
I would think, honestly, that it would be 50-50. There's probably a great amount of reverse engineering that's gone down with what you see Bob Lazar talking about on Rogan and everything he said. There's probably a great amount that all our stealth fighters are based off of, but I don't think that no country in the world has the technological capabilities that these things show with the instrumentation that the military uses. Yeah.
So if there really are UFOs, what is the intelligence, or maybe there is no intelligence? What brought them here?
That's a good question. And what brought them here? I mean, there's so many theories. For me, if I was, God Almighty alien dude traversing the stars and cosmos, I would only assume that they're looking at our genetic capability, where our genetics came from initially, in terms of who seeded us, how did it happen? Are there a lot of people like us that are somewhat our genome sequence similar in other parts of the galaxy? Is this just, there's billions of galaxies out there. Are we just some part of some civilization that lived millions of years ago? That's all I could think of, is maybe they're just observing us like a zoo. The zoo theory is what it's called.
So why have they not deliberately revealed themselves?
Well, see, that's a good question. I would say that it has something to do along the lines of the zoo theory. You don't want to really reveal yourself to, like how we, go in and get sharks and we tag them. We just, knock them out. We throw a tag on their fin and then release them back into the wild. We're not necessarily trying to say, hey, how are you? What's up, dude? What are you doing tonight? Yeah?
So if they really are real, and presumably there's some intelligence behind them or inside them or manipulating, controlling it in some way, could they just be on vacation?
I think that's probably pretty plausible.
I
wouldn't say that's out of the line.
Earth could be the most exotic zoo in the whole fucking solar system.
Well, yeah, that's what zoo theory is that we're some type of thing in the solar system and in this little suburban area of the galaxy that's just made to have life work in a way that we're interacted with. That's just the theory, but not something I abide to.
Or could they be like anthropologists or the equivalent of that?
I think so.
Explorers out on an exploration, trying to see what else there is in the universe, and they just came through and they're tagging us like Like you would go to Africa maybe and look for new species. Could they be like that?
I feel like that. I mean, I feel like that's probably the best assumption of what are they doing? They're abducting people. They're
Well,
interacting. They're
let's
flying.
hold that topic for just a second. But yeah, I like where you're going with that. So maybe that's why they don't reveal themselves. They want to come and see what's here and not disturb it. Maybe because you can imagine what kind of a well, I don't know if I could imagine it. What would that trigger if all of a sudden they landed? Let's say they landed in front of the White House and they came out and said, "Okay, we want to meet your president. We got a lot of stuff we want to show you.
Yeah.
We got some beads we want to show you."
There's some intergalactic beads.
We got some beads we'd like to trade for Hawaii.
They're super cool. They're anal beads. If you guys, we got some intergalactic anal.
Oh, we got some videos you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I know. We got stuff from 1945.
You want to see some? No, you want to see some interstellar porn?
Yeah.
What kind of a market would that develop? You know, a six-legged creature
Oh,
with
dude.
Something else, and
I
no
have no
telling what
idea.
kind of equipment.
Yeah, I think the fact that they're around and they're flying in our airspace is just generally, but beyond the deep dive of that, I think just that they're in our airspace and the Pentagon is talking about it. Something's amiss, something's not being told to us, but for the
Oh,
reasoning.
you think it might be known to certain people? They have shown themselves to maybe the military or scientific community, or
Yeah,
that's being held very tightly for some fear of
Yeah,
reaction?
I mean, there's a clause on even in NASA's papers. I forget what it is. Something that would affect national security is to be kept secret.
Oh, that's possible, I suppose. So the other thing you were brushing on, I kind of steered you away from that, abductions. What do you think about the people that report being abducted
Well,
by aliens? How do you think that, is that just a freaking nutcase, or are
I
there
don't-
too many of them out
I'm
there?
pretty sure there's like probably 90% nutcases. But you look at like Travis Walton. I was just watching a Rogan thing with him on there,
Uh-huh.
and he's the guy that was like the timber dude cutting trees, and he got abducted or something. I think it was the 70s or
Oh, I don't know.
Travis Walton.
Go ahead and talk about his story. I don't know it.
Yeah, he went through this whole process of being taken on board a ship and being let go.
Did they usually give him the usual anal
Well, he got like
treatment?
all the anal. No, I don't. He says like it was just very terrifying,
Okay.
and probably just because he was awake. But he said the fact that they returned him, it kind of takes away from the ill intention of, like, with that type of technology, you would imagine that if you were taken aboard a ship, like they could just end you, you'd be disappeared forever. But he didn't. He got returned home, and that's the case with most people who talk about, getting taken up and coming back.
But now there's also so many reports of people that just vanish and are never heard from again. Do you think
But is
there's
it-
any tie to aliens, or is that some other something?
I think there's probably a huge mix of shit, like in terms of kidnapping, people just dying, or
maybe white slavery or whatever slavery, something like that. They're
something weird.
kidnapped into some kind of bondage.
yeah, I'm sure. Like I know there's a lot of shit, and doggy, we got a doggy over here.
Yeah, in case you haven't wondered, or in case you're wondering what that is in the background, my dog is not liking this podcast too much. He doesn't like what we're saying.
You don't like it.
He just said
He's
he doesn't
getting
like
mad.
Mark at all. He came up and peed on his
No,
leg
he's
here at
being
the
nice to
beginning.
me. Doggy's nice to me. Doggy loves me. Hey, you be quiet, Mitchell.
So anyway, continuing on with the abduction thing and disappearances.
Yeah, I think there's probably a mix of, actual kidnappings, traffickings, people just dying and, nobody knowing how to solve their crime.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where do you think, let's presume there are UFOs, and they presume they are manned by something, or I bet the word "man" is wrong. It probably, that's
Yeah.
probably showing some kind of gender bias or something. I wonder if they're sensitive to that.
They're like,
Don't call
I
us
wonder what we
man.
should call
Don't
them.
call us man.
We don't even know if they have a sex or not, but whatever.
I think they're probably. I mean, I don't know. I can't stop watching since the initial release of Ancient Aliens. I mean, I know they go far fetched on a bunch of shit.
I'm going to mute us just a minute, Mark, and yell at the dog. Basil. All right, so sorry about that, folks.
We got doggy problems.
So where were you going with that? Keep on going. I'm
I
sorry.
was saying that since the release of Ancient Aliens and whenever that came out, I like the topic that they were talking about because it makes you investigate in some way the megalithic structures that are around the world, and you're like, okay, we can't do that today. Who the fuck did that? You don't have to say it's what the Pentagon's releasing right now, but you got to ask yourself, well, who the fuck did that? And now we're seeing these guys zip through the air, and the Pentagon's like, this is real. This is happening. So
it struck like a pyramids, would you say, were built 4,000 BC. Obviously, they didn't have any kind of power other than
yeah, and they were saying that they might have been built
muscle
just as
power.
a power generator. The muscle power thing mathematically doesn't add up, and you have an engineering background, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't add up in terms of the height, the circumference of the base. It doesn't add up. You'd have to have like a mile-long ramp or something like that to continually build those blocks up. So I don't believe that.
And other structures you were referring to, like the Mayans,
there's
some in South America.
Pumapunka, I think, and what's the other one? In Lebanon, what's the fucking name of it? There's like a gigantic megalithic, just like a monolith laid out on its side, and it's like 12.
I think it's in South America. There's also this area that's laid out that if you look at it from an aerial survey, you ask yourself, how could anyone have laid that out if they were just working on the ground to lay it out in such a way?
You're talking about in Peru, right?
Yeah, I think it's in Peru.
Yeah, in Peru, they made they were pretty much just trying to communicate with their gods, if you will. They were making spacemen.
But how did they lay it out so perfectly without any kind of modern surveying tools? No aerial survey. They didn't have a drone. They didn't have a drone. They could fly up there and take a look at it.
That's interesting you say that because that's actually possible in a sense. It's way more possible to do what they did. I think it was in what's the fucking name of it? I can't think of it. Peru. It's in Peru, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Nazca.
That
Nazca
rings a
lines.
bell.
Nazca lines are more plausible than the Egyptian pyramids.
Okay.
And then other stone structures around the world, or Pumapunka. Those things are drilled down like laser tip drilled. That cannot be done today. That would be very difficult to do. Getting those fucking stones cut precise, just like that, and then lifted, set into place. That is very difficult.
So let me take you a little different direction of that. You've talked more about their possible presence here on Earth sometime historically and the impact they may have had. Where'd they come from? I mean, if they came here, they obviously didn't originate here.
I don't think there's one.
So they came from somewhere else.
Yeah, I don't think there's one. I think that this has been a conglomerate of shit that's happened over time. Many, many thousands and thousands of years. I don't think it's one people came here and they're the little green man. I think this has been a ongoing thing. You look at the Anunnaki, you look at China, and you look at Wang Ti, which was the Yellow Emperor. He was the first emperor of China. He said he came from the Leo constellation. I think it's called Regulus A or something like that.
Okay.
It's the brightest star in the sky. He said he came from there. He made Chinese writing. He made mathematics. for them, and he also, did silk and all this other shit. That's all from him. That's one guy. Then you go to fucking the Middle East. Now you got the Anunnaki. You got these people who came from the sky, and they were living amongst men. And
But they came from the sky. Where in the sky, though?
Well, they said they came from some other planet in the solar system, which I don't really adhere to that. I think it's a little bit more complex than that.
Do you think it's possible there is some intelligent life on some other planet in this solar system?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think maybe like, if you look at Mars, I mean, it was able to have life, on it prior to whatever the problematic issues that happen with the atmosphere. I think for sure.
Yeah, well, to your point, and maybe more from a scientific perspective and research that I've done, Mars is a much smaller planet than the Earth, has a much smaller gravitational field. And so perhaps it went through its evolution or transition into a period that it could sustain some kind of life much earlier in time.
Much earlier, yeah.
Hundreds of millions of years, perhaps, when there maybe was still water and enough of an atmosphere to retain a reasonable temperature. I mean, right now, Mars is pretty inhospitable.
Yeah.
100 degrees below zero or more every night.
Yeah, it's
very
not,
little atmosphere, some, but very little, mostly carbon dioxide.
But they're finding a lot of methane that's being released in certain seasons. Right
Yeah,
now.
and I've seen that. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
They're finding a lot of methane.
Would seem like an indicator. I mean, there are chemical processes possible, but methane is kind of synonymous with life.
With life, yeah.
At least on Earth, it is.
And they're saying that maybe they were kind of trying to postulate, like, what could this be? Maybe it's frozen stuff that was under the surface, or and heating up. I don't know what exactly.
Well, I think that's not a bad theory, because on Earth, they have found in ancient glaciers that there is methane trapped from primordial times of Earth's existence. It's hundreds of millions of years old, and that methane was trapped in the ice and has been there all this time.
Yeah, in the Antarctic and the polar ice cap.
Yeah, polar ice cap. So maybe you could assume something similar would have happened on Mars.
I think so.
Way back there.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was probably I don't know. I'm no scientist. I'm no anybody. I just know that. Look at what happened I think it's 1976. The Voyager, or what was the Mars reconnaissance thing that happened in the 70s?
I don't know this.
And
there's been so many different ones.
They found the face on Mars and the city, and that was not bullshit. But they told us later on, oh, this is just shadows. Mm-hmm. Everybody said that worked on that project, this is not shadows. This is realistic shit. Here it is. There's a face there. We don't know why. And there's a city that geometrically matched the Giza pyramids and their relation to the Sphinx. So if you were a math person like, Joe over here.
No, I've stumbled into those pictures, but I haven't heard anything about the city, so I'm going to have to take your word on that one.
I wish we had some like Q stuff where you could just like beep, beep.
I have to research that one a little bit, I think, Mark.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting and how they try to wipe it out. So I would say there was probably, in my opinion, some civilization that lived there, or if it wasn't from there, it was there at some point. Maybe they came and, I don't know, set up shop, and they were like, what's up?
So, Mark, this has been really good. I see we're up at another about 20 minutes or so into it. I know you got to go off and do virtual red band.
Virtual red band.
Virtual red band.
Shout out. What's up, red band?
So maybe we ought to start thinking about bringing this to an end. What would you like to talk about next time? This has been really good. I've enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah,
Do you have any thoughts
dude.
about another episode? And
I think
maybe
the next
take in some
episode we
different
should
topics?
just yeah, just jump in our topics, the stuff
Seems
that
like
we talk
you
about
and I
privately.
have a pretty good chemistry as far as when we get on a topic.
Yeah,
Each
I think
of
it's
us
fun. I mean, it's
can add a dimension. Or
it's very fluid. I think we should just continue that and roll with the punches, and maybe do more of the cue cards next time, so we kind of know. But I think
I didn't use any.
no, but see, this is what Rogan does. It's like he knows what he's going to talk about, and then discusses
I had no
it.
idea what I was going to talk about. You gave me all my ideas, man. I wouldn't have brought up the tornado if you hadn't mentioned it
Yeah,
to me.
the tornadoes, they're coming through.
I have to say the UFOs, I had preconceived that because I did that prior goofy episode on UFOs by myself, which is pretty poor, but anyway, it was a start. Mark,
good.
man, I appreciate you coming over. It was a pleasure to have you
Pleasure.
here. I'm going to fade us out, and we'll see you next time, bud.
All right, I'll see you, brother.